to the agenda. No hands up, and then we'll take the items in the order in which they appear. Approval of the proceedings from our February 3rd board meeting. Are there any comments on those proceedings? I see no hands up. Any objections to approving those proceedings as presented? No objections. The proceedings stand approved. Public comment. We allow individuals to speak on behalf of and toward issues that do not appear on the agenda. No one signed up on the attendance sheet. Is there anyone in the audience that would like an opportunity to address the board on issues that do not appear on the agenda? No hands up again. Okay, so we're going to proceed with item 4 on the agenda, which is a review and set the specifications. Just for everyone's edification, this is a two-part action which will be required. One is to set the actual quota, and the second is to set the trip limit. I've asked the staff to develop some language that we can look at after the presentation. So, Max.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Try to get us back on schedule. I'll get through this pretty quickly. If you were at the Mid-Atlantic Council meeting earlier this month, a lot of this information and some of the slides are taken straight from that presentation. So for new members around the table and any public listening in, this is a jointly managed species, managed jointly with the Mid-Atlantic and New England Councils. The interstate FMP is complementary to that federal plan. The council is currently in the middle of a 3-year specification cycle. Up on the screen there, a reminder that the fishing season is from May 1st to April 30th. And the commission is going 1 year at a time with this. So right now we're looking at that middle time period, May 1, 2017 to April 30, 2018. That's the 2017 fishing season. In September, the SSC met to review the 2016 data update and the AP's fishery performance report. And based on those materials, they saw no compelling evidence to change its ABC recommendations for the 2017 and 2018 fishing seasons. Also in September, the monitoring committee met, reviewed that same information, and made no changes to their previous recommendations either. So this is just a table of that multi-year specification cycle, starting with the OFLs and ABCs up at the top there, working its way down through the commercial quotas at the bottom, taking Canadian landings into account, management uncertainty, discards, recreational landings, and the current, at the bottom there, the commercial quotas for the current fishing season is 40.4 million pounds, 2017 is 39.1, and for 2018 is 38.2 million pounds. So you did see that there is a decreasing trend in the ABC and the quotas throughout that specification cycle, and that's based on information coming out of the latest stock assessment, which projected SSB to dip somewhat through 2019 before rebounding back up again. So just making a point that, you know, those findings did show SSB climbing again after that specification cycle, and you could expect to see quotas increase as well during the next specs cycle. But of course, that does depend on survey results and other fishery information. Just, this is a figure of the spring survey data, observed index values through time. This is the primary fishery independent data source going to stock assessment. The red dots are the observed values. The blue and green lines are the Kalman filter. So you'll recall last year there was limited information coming from that spring survey, and the council directed or asked the Science Center to do some additional exploration of some smoothing options or smoothing techniques to address that missing data, and the Kalman filter is what came out of that process. It was also endorsed by the SSC. So the big take-home from this figure, though, is that the survey value was up in the last year in 2016, so no hiccups or cause for alarm there. This figure is showing commercial landings through time. The orange line is last year's landings, and the blue line is this year up to date. This was taken from the GARFO quota monitoring page just late last week. And you can see that landings have been a little bit higher this year compared to last. There was a pretty steep trajectory there over the summer, and it seems like it's tapered off a little bit. But just pointing out that, if this trajectory continues throughout the season, we could see some fishery closures this year. A couple things to keep in mind when you look at that trajectory compared to last year. There were some measures that went into place recently and are just starting to impact the fishery. One was a trip limit increase from 5,000 pounds to 6,000 pounds. That went into effect August 15th. And then the second thing here is a framework action taken at the councils that sort of clarifies this gray area, whether spiny dogfish and monkfish could be targeted on the same trip using different gears in different areas. Not exactly sure how much this could impact effort, as more as it just clarifies something that's already been going on. A few points from the fishery performance report to explain, to just put on your radar here, is that demand continues to be a critical part of this fishery. It's characterized as a low price per pound fishery, so any little changes in that price can have big impacts on the participation in the fishery. Another point is that most participants seem to want small incremental changes, if any, although there is a small group that want to see some bigger trip limits to explore some other market possibilities. And then this last point here is getting at that there's still some market and regulatory issues discouraging interest in the southern regions, the lack of processors, and it just continues to be a roadblock to participation in that region. And then one more slide here, just put some topics on the horizon, some things, the reoccurring topics that have been coming up. One is the AP and the monitoring committee continue to note that the need for a benchmark assessment, and there's a couple bullets here. This is not a comprehensive list by any means, but just some things that they've noted that they'd like explored further in that benchmark. One is the survey sampling design, how we're surveying the population, and is it adequate? And then the other is reviewing some reproductive information that goes in the stock assessment that might be a little bit outdated, and see if we can improve that. And then this last bullet is continued discussion about interest in a male-only fishery. There was some thesis work done in collaboration with GARFO and Science Center staff that sort of suggests that this could be possible, that there are certain times of the year and in very specific areas where male-only harvest is a viable option. So to wrap it all up, the Mid-Atlantic Council met October 5th. They reviewed this exact same information and recommended no changes to the previously recommended specifications. So that's 39.1 million pounds for 2017, the commercial quota, and 38.2 million pounds for the commercial quota in 2018, and a 6,000 pound trip limit. This is, again, just that same slide I showed you earlier of all those specifications, but I think this next slide, I'll keep this up on the screen once I finish here, but this is showing you the state-specific and regional-specific allocations based on those quotas. That concludes my presentation. I'll take any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Max. Any questions for Max? No hands up. So let me try to speed this along and ask, is there anyone at the table, any of the board members want to propose anything different than what the Mid-Atlantic Council proposed? Anyone? Is there anyone in the audience that thinks we should consider? No one, no hands up. Okay, so we anticipated this. I asked the staff to prepare a joint motion on both of these. If you could put it up, then I would ask someone to make this motion, please. Terry Stockwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to adopt the 2017 commercial quota of 39,099,717 pounds, which is consistent with a commercial quota recommended by the Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council to NOAA Fisheries, and a 6,000-pound trip limit for the northern region.
Seconded by Eric. We had like 4 hands up simultaneously. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table. Any discussion on the motion? No hands up. Are you ready for the question? Since it's a final action, we have to do this by roll call. So, Max, can you read the roll, please?
Yep. Maine?
Yes.
New Hampshire?
Yes.
Massachusetts?
Yes.
Rhode Island?
Yes.
Connecticut?
Yes.
New York?
Yes.
New Jersey?
Yes.
Delaware?
Yes.
Maryland?
Yes.
Virginia?
Yes.
North Carolina?
Yes.
U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service?
Yes.
National Marine Fisheries Service?
Yes.
It's unanimous. Motion passes. Right, next item on the agenda is to consider the fishery performance report. Max?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, a very brief presentation here. This is a FMP review of the 2015 fishing year. Again, that's May 1st, 2015 through April 30 of 2016. Quick review of the latest stock status information. The latest info is coming from the 2015 stock assessment update. And based on those findings, spiny dogfish is not overfished and overfishing is not occurring. In 2015, female SSB was estimated at just over 168,000 metric tons, which is above the target value, and fishing mortality was estimated at 0.21, which is similarly below the target value. This is a figure showing commercial landings versus the quota through time. You can see that there was a bit of a spike in the quota in 2012, whereas landings sort of tapered off, and thoughts are that this is most likely reflecting market conditions during that time. A quick summary of some harvest statistics in 2015. The commercial quota was 50.6 million pounds with a 5,000 pound trip limit for the northern region. Commercial landings from the U.S. were estimated at 22 million pounds. And this is less than 50% of that quota, again, probably reflecting market conditions. A note here that all states and regions harvested within their quota allocations, and so no compliance issues there. Recreational landings were just over almost 87,000 pounds, and discards were estimated at 7.3 million pounds, which is actually a few million pounds lower compared to recent years, and this could be indicating improved utilization of the resource. The plan review team reviewed all the state compliance reports, and based on those reports found that all states had implemented regulations consistent with the requirements of the Interstate FMP and Addenda 1 through 5. However, the PRT does note that Connecticut did not meet the May 1, 2015 compliance schedule of Addendum 5. That addendum requires fins to remain attached to the carcass through landing, and that Connecticut just recently came into compliance with that addendum. The last thing I have up here is a request for de minimis status by Delaware. The FMP states that de minimis status can be granted if their state landings are less than 1% of the commercial coast-wide landings, and based on those estimates, Delaware does meet the requirements for de minimis status in 2016. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Questions on the report? Any questions? Yes, Dave Pierce.
Yeah, Max, you indicated that right now we're not overfishing dogfish. At the same time, in the report that you provided, it appears that we are a hair's breadth under what would classify as overfishing. Do you have any information that would help us understand the significance of that? Notably, the assessment information we have in hand or updates that might be scheduled that will address this question. Have we got any preview of where we might find ourselves relative to overfishing or not?
I think the best way for me to answer that is back to what the AP and MC have been noting, that we really need another benchmark assessment. I think we're scheduled for an update in 2 years. Next year is still a data update. I'm not super familiar with the assessment. I'm kind of relatively new to this species management plan and the assessment, but I can look into that a little bit more and maybe get back to you.
It's a great assessment. And Paul Rago, Dr. Rago of the Northeast Fisheries Science Center has retired. And he is the one who did so many magical things with spiny dogfish, such as the Kalman filter. I just want to bring to the attention of the board a potential problem that might affect us actually for 2017 going into 18. The Kalman filter was used in a creative way in order to deal with the fact that the albatross, actually the Bigelow was not able to survey important areas in the mid-Atlantic area, southern New England area where dogfish were expected to be abundant. Those survey stations were not accomplished. So we had a missing data point for 2014. We used a 3-year moving average to come up with the biomass estimates and also estimates of fish and mortality. My understanding is that in 2016, this year in the spring, there was about a month, maybe over a month delay in the spring survey. So my fear is that we may find ourselves with some update that would indicate that we don't have 2014 information and we don't have 2016 information, so we have 2 years missing from a 3-year moving average. This is just something we need to follow. I wanted to call it to Max's attention in particular, since you now have this responsibility, and there's a lot of history behind how this stock has been assessed. So that's just some information for the board's consideration, since, as I said, we're a hair's breadth according to the figure in front of me here, figure 1 in the review of the interstate plan. Actually, it's figure 2. We're very close to the threshold. So if there was a problem with the 2016 spring survey relative to getting us a good indication of the biomass that I continue to think is still very high, we may find ourselves suddenly with an update that will tell us that we are overfishing. So again, for Max's consideration.
Tony?
David, we talked about at the NRCC our last NRCC meeting, the schedule for all the assessments, and there is a data update. We've been doing a lot of what I call rumble strips, but we are going to actually run the model with New Year's of data. I can't remember off the top of my head if we actually got an assessment, a benchmark assessment put onto the books because of all of the MRIP species that need to be looked at in 2018. I've sent an email over to Emily Gilbert, who keeps all track of everything that we do at the NRCC meeting, to see how we revised that SAW-SARC schedule, and I will let the board know either at the policy board, likely how we change that.
Max, did you want to respond further to Dr. Pierce's
Yeah,
question?
I'm just looking at the same figure, and the dashed line at the top there is actually the target line. We are getting close to the target, but overfish wouldn't occur until it hits the threshold line.
Any other questions on the report? Any objection to approving the report as presented, which would include granting Delaware de minimis status? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had more of a comment. I didn't catch you in time before we moved on. In terms of the compliance, I think it would be very helpful for states if we were able to get a list of the compliance requirements and the corresponding implementation dates, and then the states could respond with the actions taken, and I think it would have been helpful for us to have implemented ours in a more timely manner.
Okay, thank you. So we've heard the report. There are no questions on the report. Any objections to approving a report as submitted, which would include granting Delaware de minimis status? No objections? Then it's adopted with unanimous consent. Any further business to come before the board? If not, the meeting's adjourned. Coastal sharks will start in 2 minutes.
Emily just sent me the email, and we are doing another just a data update. We're actually not doing an assessment update in 2017, and we do not have anything on the books for dogfish in 2018 currently.
Terry Stockwell, you got a point?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you completely adjourned Spiny Dogfish, you and I had a sidebar conversation about potential for a working group prior to setting the specs next year.
Oh yes, thank you for reminding me. There have been, I'll just make this really brief, there have been a number of suggestions. Michael has made suggestions in the past, Rob O'Reilly, Terry Stockwell, I think some of the Rhode Island delegation have made the same suggestion that we put together like a subcommittee to evaluate some of the suggestions that have been put forth by in the fishery performance report by the Mid-Atlantic Council. And the idea would be not necessarily to take any action on it. It would be to just work through some of those concepts in anticipation of next year. So this is kind of a long-range planning group. Those suggestions have been made by a fair number of people. Does anyone object to doing that? And if there are no objections, then we'll circulate a memo, and if individual states want to volunteer for it, at that point, we'll do that. So I see no hands up, no objections, then we will do that. That concludes the meeting, this portion of the board meeting. Thank you.